Jan Logie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to start my speech on this paying tribute to sole parent families who are struggling on a benefit to do the best for their children, who are parenting alone, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, struggling to be able to put food on the table and feed their children. And to acknowledge their children, all too many of whom don't have a bed of their own, don't have enough to eat, who are surviving some days on sandwiches because that's all that's left at the end of the week out of the budget, who don't get Christmas presents or birthday presents because there's not enough money in the family budget to be able to pay for them, who can't afford school trips. I really want to acknowledge those children, and I want to acknowledge the New Zealanders who have been fighting for years, who have been raising their hearts to the government to stand up to change that situation, because the well-being of our children is the soul of our country. And when our children are suffering, then we are suffering as a country. So I want to acknowledge that fight and all those people who have forced the government into this measure, which is the first time benefit rates have been increased since 1972. The Greens have been raising issues of child poverty for over a decade now, and we are passionate about changing this reality because we know it's possible. And while we're hearing from the government that this is the first time since 1972, they're admitting the fact that they cut the benefits in 1990, and we're still not even returning with this increase to the levels they were in 1990. And that this $25 a week isn't actually $25 a week for most families, because that $25 will be eroded by cuts to the accommodation supplement and cuts to the temporary additional assistance or supplement, which many families are using just to get by. So the $25 a week, which is the cost of, say, nappies for one child, is not even going to be that much extra in the hand for all too many of our families. So when you think of those children who are going without shoes, who are going out without raincoats, who are going without school trips, who are going without birthday presents and enough food to eat, we know this isn't the answer. The Greens will support this bill because it's something, and those children, they need something, but they deserve a whole lot more than what this is. And I also just really want to raise a very real concern that we have with this bill, and it's another example of the government giving with one hand and taking with the other. Because what this bill will do will require parents with children who are just 3 years old to go out and be looking for 20 hours a week of work. Sole parents who are doing the job of caring for their family alone are now going to be expected to be working for a minimum of 20 hours a week, as well as providing for the needs of their children. And we know that that actually may mean a reduction in their incomes, because the abatement on the benefits, and it will work out to, like, I think $2.20 an hour extra if they're getting $15 an hour in those jobs. And we know most of those jobs, sadly, are at very minimum wages. And that's actually probably not going to cover the cost of travel or childcare or the clothes that are expected to be worn in that job, let alone the extra needs of those children for compensating for not having their parent there. And I really want to say that while we're hearing a lot in the House about if you can work, then we expect you to work. Well, the Green Party believes caring for young children and children with complex needs is work. It is something we value and we believe will pay off for the entire society in the long term if we support it. We have no concept yet as a society what the consequences are going to be in 20 years' time of a generation of adults, who they will be by this stage, who have not had that time with their parents, who have been in the care of strangers for so many hours a week, whose parents have lost out on the opportunity to participate in play centre or kohanga reo or other family-centred childcare movements that have provided so much to our communities and so much in terms of growing knowledge around parenting for those families and our children. We have no concept yet what the consequence of separating parents from their children, like these kind of policies are doing, will be. And I think it really, really requires some deep thought from this House and from the public about that issue. And the Green Party will certainly not be supporting this bill out of Select Committee unless that changes. Because our children deserve at least one parent who is able to be there for them in those early years. They deserve that ability for attachment and security. And again, as is my wont, I will remind this House that the indications are that of sole parents, 70% of them are probably leaving violent relationships. And if you think of the needs of those children and that woman, typically, to resettle themselves, to recover, to actually bed in and get well and move on in their lives. And think about whether that's actually possible while you're juggling the care of your children and working 20 hours a week. I would say from my experience of working with women in that situation, for many of them, it's not possible. And the needs of their children will suffer. And that will put many women in a situation of feeling as if they're conflicted enough to go back into a relationship that is not safe. This bill raises many, many concerns for us as a House and as a party. And I really want to also mention that while we're being told it will also offer increases in working for families, that it's a little bit more complicated than that, and that the change to the abatement rate without changing the abatement threshold will result in the family with one partner working being worse off than they currently are if their annual income exceeds $36,406 a week, or if they're getting $17 an hour, $50 an hour. So an extra 2 cents per hour income for that people will eat up the entire $12.50 increase in the base rate for the in-work tax credit component of working for families. And with income still well below a living wage, actually being worse off under this proposed working for families regime. So we're being told by this government that they've suddenly got the message that everyone's lobbying around the welfare of our children has got through, they've got it. So they're making this change to the working for families. But in actual fact, it's such a marginal change, and within that change, some families are actually going to be worse off. So I'm pleased this is not passing through all stages under urgency, because there certainly seems to be enough in here that we need to look at really closely. But to conclude, I really want to go back to the fact that we have over 250,000 children living in poverty in this country, and between 60 and 100,000 without decent shoes, without enough to eat, without Christmas presents or birthday presents and warm clothes or a bed of their own. Those children need us to fix that problem. And sadly, this bill will not fix that problem.
Awesome.